Hello and welcome to this episode of Spotlight with Sandhya. Joining me on the show today is Sindhu Sreenivasa Murthy, a debutant filmmaker who's made Achar and Company, one of the cutest and most popular Kannada films so far this year, and I would say it ranks very highly amongst my all-time list of popular films. So today, I'm going to be asking Sindhu how she chose this topic and what made her a filmmaker. Welcome to the show, Sindhu.
Thank you. Thank you for having me, Sandhya.
So let's start off. Achar and Company.
Yeah.
For the benefit of our audience who might not have seen it yet, really, you should remedy that. Please go and watch the film. It's streaming on
Amazon Prime.
And you'll thank me for it later. Okay, Sindhu, please tell the audience what the film is about in a nutshell.
In a nutshell, it's about these siblings of a Orthodox Brahmin family in Jayanagar in the 60s, growing up among the themes of patriarchy and gender roles in society, and also tackles women empowerment, etc. So basically what that decade went through, we see it through these siblings of this family.
Okay, but what I liked is the very light and humorous touch.
Yeah.
This film has a message. Like she said, she talks about how women have gained agency, and how young men too have had to fight patriarchy, and this whole kind of pressure on large families to take care of their siblings and still live in harmony. The kind of pressures that society imposes and expectations that middle class families have. But she has such a light touch to this. So it does not seem like a preachy film or that it has a propaganda film.
Yeah.
You can just go watch it for fun and come back without having to take away anything as, oh, this film has taught me something. But you're going to enjoy it, and all the more so because the actors, the cast. Yeah. And here I have to tell you that Sindhu herself is a lead actor in the film. They're all so relatable. They're all people that we would immediately identify. I could identify all my aunts and uncles in the cast. Okay. And it was absolutely delightful to see how they have picked up on all the little idiosyncrasies. And how long did you work on the script, Sindhu?
So the scripting started in 2017 actually. My co-writer Kanan Gill and I, we started with the story first, which included a lot of research. So the research itself took about 4 to 6 months, just trying to get everything together, whether it's like what historically events do we want to touch upon, or what are the themes that we want to keep in the story, and how do we sort of make each character unique. So the character arcs also took quite a bit of time because we wanted to make sure that each one of them was unique. Like you said, I could totally identify one of them as my uncles or one of them as my aunts, is because we keep them as unique so that you could relate to as many of them, and they're all as different from each other. So it took about 4 to 6 months in just the story phase, and then it took about a month to write the screenplay. But I think the setback really was the pandemic. Taking it from the scripting stage to production really took a longer time than I anticipated. But it has been a very good learning experience overall because it's my first. To see characters on paper come to life on screen is something else. It's because I was also writing, I knew everybody's dialogues and I knew my own. So any scene that we would go into, I'd be able to narrate everybody's lines. And I think that was one of the preparations that also I really loved, was whenever I was auditioning people for the actors, I was auditioning them personally at some point, because it was also rehearsal for me. If in case I happen to have scenes with them, it would also turn out to be a rehearsal for me.
And it kind of helped you fine-tune.
Yeah, because scenes. I know that I will not be able to get enough time on set to experiment, because I'll be donning two hats, which is of an actor and a director. So I wanted to come with a lot of preparation. So these auditions were just my playground. I would just rehearse my scenes in those auditions. And also I would see who was able to kind of played off with me, the other actors who came in, the ones who kind of really were able to give me something and then would also take something
the
from
chemistry.
me. Yes, the chemistry of two characters, whether it's like, my brothers or the ones who are playing my sisters. I would really see if they're able to do something more as well. So it really helped that I was also an actor and I was also directing this in some way. So it was really fun.
I noticed a lot of the cast is, from the theatre world.
Yes.
Was it a conscious choice?
Yes.
Now, let's talk about that.
So I come from theatre. I've been acting in theatre since I was like 16 years old. So I took to it very young, knowing that there's a lot of discipline involved in it and it would do great for me because I was anyway terrible at academics. And I really loved the universe of theatre, like because you rehearse for like multiple months. It's so disciplined, and then you go put on a show and it's a live show. So you really cannot mess up. Or if you do, you should be able to cover it up in a way that the audience can never tell. Right? And that's about like thinking quick on your feet, etc. So you really develop these sort of, I would say, qualities that is fantastic for an actor. So one of the reasons I remember when I pitched it to PRK, and the first things I told them was, I do not want a star in this film. And they would be like, why not? Like it would help, the film, etc. And market it especially. But one of the things was that the minute you bring in a star to play, you've seen the film, whether it's Suma, Raghu or Jaggu, what happens, like the audience already has a preconceived notion about a star, right? They really love them for other things outside of the film itself.
It's like Shah Rukh Khan. He's Shah Rukh Khan.
He's Shah Rukh Khan. You will not be able to ignore it when he comes into the film. Yeah, you won't be able to ignore it, and you will not be able to see the siblings as equals. You'll already have a favorite because he's just Shah Rukh Khan, let's say, right? So we didn't want that. We wanted a level playing field for all the siblings, so that it's really up to the audience who they like. So like that's why like Raghu, Jaggu, Suma, like so many of them stand out. Even the twins, there's so many of them who stand out in one film because everybody's been given a level playing field. And of course, it also helps that they come with a lot of discipline and preparation because we were also going for a lot of shots and takes which were one take. Like one shot. We didn't want to break up the scene. Like the ones with the BBC, the characters, the BBC, they were always one take shots. So if they messed up, they had to do the entire thing all over again. There were no cuts in that. Or even the ones with me and Jaggu or Suma and Raghu, we had a few emotional scenes where there were no cuts. And when you have like a film that's played out like that, you'd really want your actors to be as prepared as possible and come with that discipline of knowing their lines, working on their body language and doing a lot of homework basically, and then coming on set so that, you don't have to really handhold them, or it doesn't feel like any other film and any other set of actors you've seen on screen before. So I think that was the main reason why we wanted actors from theatre. And of course, theatre has such brilliant performers who really deserve a stage, and they deserve the recognition because we often don't go to, like, let's say, a Rangashankara or a Jagrati as often as we should to promote these people and to promote the art that they create. So I think this was a great way to kind of fuse that and make space for everyone.
Absolutely. And they standout performances.
Yeah.
And I like the way that each of them had their own unique voice and space given to them. What I also liked was the way you recreated the period. And if I remember right, it was a very brief shooting schedule, right?
Yes, it was about 40 days.
And you chose to shoot in Mysore.
Yes.
Tell us about that.
So I think the first challenge of creating a period film is always the location. We did not want to create a set because the minute you create a set, it feels artificial. It doesn't feel lived in. Like you don't have those oil stains or those hand marks or, the imperfection in the flooring. You don't have these qualities in a set. So we were like, let's try and find live locations. But Bangalore doesn't support that because even if you find one house that resembles a 60s architecture, in and around it, you have like multiplexes or apartment buildings or like, these very fancy cars, even vehicles, right? It just doesn't add to the film. And it takes away the believable factor of the entire thing, of the world that we're trying to create. So I think I did 2 recce's, one by myself to first show the producer that this is possible to create such a world. And so I went to Mysore, I did a recce by myself and I just went photographing places that would suit the era that I had in mind. And then I just put a deck together and I showed it to them, and they were like, "Oh my god, this looks so authentic." So then post COVID and etc., we went back and we scouted locations again to make sure, like, even for example, the theater scene has, you can't notice it in the shot, but it has those wooden chairs. Because back in the day, theaters were like either plastic or wooden chairs.
Right.
They didn't have the sofas, the recliners that you have today. In fact, sometimes they were just benches. So we went into that detailing to see that, if someone notices, then, we should be on like the cautious side to always make sure that we have the perfect setting for everything. So yeah, we shot over 40 days in Mysore.
Absolutely. But you did have to recreate the West End for their family dinner.
Yes. I really wanted to shoot at West End itself. But again, there are so many...
They have changed. I
Yes.
mean, West End has changed over the last several years.
Yeah, especially the interiors. I think the exteriors have managed to preserve
exteriors
it.
they would never change.
But the
old-
interiors have kind of been updated and they're more modern. So we found a
Right.
cheat.
That's okay. You have to work around what you have to work around.
Yeah.
But I also really like the contribution that the music has made
Yes.
to the film. Starting with the Suprabhatam, I think
Yeah.
it just started laughing from the very first opening notes. The lyricist has done a
Yeah.
wonderful
Yeah.
job of it. And Bindu's music
Yeah.
throughout,
Yeah.
you don't notice it. You don't so much notice background music
Yeah.
in movies like this. You typically notice it in action films or
Yeah.
horror films. People don't notice it so much, but am I right that she created a signature sound for characters?
Absolutely.
Yeah?
Yeah.
So tell us about that, because I know you worked very closely on
Yeah.
it.
So we like to call it a Bindu Malini musical itself because the music really carries the film from the beginning to the very end. And so many of it, like, people just hum now because they've become so familiar with the tunes. So
The mango song also.
yeah. I have to mention Trivekrama, who wrote the lyrics of 3 of the songs, and especially your favorite, both Pickle and Suprabhatam. And he's also written the dialogues for the film.
Oh.
So again, if you think I'm young, he's younger than me, and he's written.
Oh, wow.
He's penned most of the lyrics and the dialogues for this film. So when we sat down, I think our first working point was the Pickle Song. Because when I pitched it to Bindu, I remember we met at Ranga Shankara and I was trying to narrate the whole story to her. But what really caught her attention was the Pickle Song. Because at that time, I knew that I wanted a song which felt very natural. Like, I'm not a huge fan of a film suddenly breaking into song and dance out of nowhere, because it's a huge disconnect. And I was thinking, if we could have a song which feels believable, where the sisters are singing the song in the kitchen while making pickles, but she also has to go through these set of grooms and make a decision. So the song can be about that. And also because nobody's going to sit there with a veena and suddenly start playing or anything. Let's use kitchen utensils to create an a cappella. So that was the origin of the Pickle Song, to make it as believable as possible so that it could feel like we could actually do this.
Right, in a very natural setting.
Exactly.
Absolutely,
And it just so happened that Bindu's family, her grandmom and grandaunts and mum, all of them in the 60s, that started something called the Kitchen Orchestra. And I had no idea about this. So it felt like a whole world coming full circle for Bindu, because she was like, oh my God, finally there's a place where I can pay tribute to that orchestra, the type of thing that happened. And it even aired on Doordarshan in the 1980s. The Kitchen
wow.
Orchestra. Yeah.
Okay, her family Kitchen Orchestra.
Yes. And Bindu is like a little baby in that video. So for us, it felt extremely beautiful that we could take something that felt was our very own and kind of pay tribute to that and that era and that generation. So that was the starting point, the Pickle Song itself. And then she worked different sections, like the Western section, because we knew that it was going to be very European influence, very Western influence. So we did a bit of that jazz, but also Carnatic, like had a confluence of that. Mm-hmm. And also because Jaggu is very notorious, we thought maybe we should have a theme for Jaggu. And BBC especially, BBC always appear in threes and they always have something to say, something to comment about. So we're like, it would be really fun if they had their own theme music going on. So that's how like the major characters like the BBC, Suma, Jaggu, all of them got their own theme music as well.
Wonderful. You know, much as I like to think of the time when I am able to relate to the characters, like I said, it reminds me of my aunts and my uncles because my mom had such a huge family. And when I want to think of the times when I felt safest or happiest, it was always in the midst of all these loving aunts and uncles.
Yeah.
But you people never experienced it. You're talking about a generation old, prior to mine.
Yeah.
So why is this nostalgic theme attractive to you when you haven't even experienced it?
See, I have only one sister, which I understand that where the question comes from. But my mom's side of the family, my mom had like 12 siblings, and my dad's side of the family, he had, I think, 7 to 8 of them. So I know what that feels like. I've grown up with all of my cousins, my aunts in different parts of Karnataka, in different parts of Bangalore itself. And it's always been the fondest memory that I carry, the ones I've spent, like my summer holidays with my grandmom and granddad and my cousins. And I really miss that today because we've all just kind of like spread out in into nuclear families. And we were always that way. But I think there was just something about life back then, even the 90s, because I'm a 90s kid, even in the 90s, technology wasn't this intrusive in our lives. So we still somehow made it back to each other, like during our summer holidays or Dasara vacations or, name it, and we'd be like getting together, celebrating Ganesh Chaturthi together or Deepavali or, Shankranti and Ugadi and all of that. It was such big things. I feel like today, a lot of that has just kind of loosened up. Like, we're all spread out, we're doing our own thing, and there's a lot on our plate, honestly. So I honestly feel like a part of me just wants to go back in time and also experience what it felt like in much simpler times, like the 60s, 70s, and 80s. And honestly, I'm a huge fan of that era. In general, my music, everything is influenced by that era. I think I had told you in the conversation earlier that my music, I used to listen to a lot of, and even today appreciate a lot of Lata Mangeshkar, Kishore Kumar, Mohammad Rafi, and someone would look at me and be like, what? But that's what I grew up listening to because my family get-togethers, they would play these songs on the cassette tapes, and it was all about that. And then my cousins who were slightly older than me, they passed down music like, Janis Joplin, Simon and Garfunkel, or AC/DC and Pink Floyd and all of that down to me. So they came down in like CDs in the 90s. So my music taste has also heavily been influenced, like the Beatles, all of that. And I think it's such a classic era. Even the music, the taste, and the lifestyle itself, so classic. That I was immediately drawn to sort of making something in that zone. And I think that life was just so beautiful and simple. I felt like it would be a great insight to people today who are watching it, who probably don't have any idea of that era at all.
Absolutely. In my mind, it's a beautiful melange of, all my favorite characters that I've from Jane Austen, the Sense and Sensibility, Pride and Prejudice, and Emma, so many, and those little, maybe even like something from what we could relate to by reading more contemporary fiction, but somehow it's all coming together very well.
Yeah,
I feel that the way people realize that they need to change was also brought about very, very delicately.
Yeah.
It wasn't harsh. I mean, it was harsh for the character that you played.
Yeah.
It was a harsh reality, but I liked that it ended on a happy note. And I really wish, Sindhu, that you do a sequel. I know other people have been telling you too, because hello, the story can't end there. Achar and company has to march further through the years.
Yeah, I mean, I like how you mentioned that, it was a quiet movement, and that's how I would describe the 60s as well. I felt like there was a quiet movement, an undercurrent of movement that was happening. It was all very circumstantial that things started changing for women in the 60s, right? Because patriarchy was largely how things worked in our society. Unless something happened to the patriarch, women really didn't have the need to do any, like, come to the forefront and take the responsibilities of the house, etc. So that's exactly what happened in the 60s, is that slowly women started realizing that they needed to be educated, that they needed to get jobs to finally have some financial independence, whether it's for themselves or for their family, for the betterment of the family, and then make something of themselves as well. And I think the reason today that I'm here as a filmmaker, and which is very few, even today there are very few, uh, let's say, female directors in my industry. The fact that I'm sitting here today, having my film produced and released in the theaters and on an OTT right now, it's because women just broke the barriers long ago in the 60s. They did smaller things which have led to like greater impact.
Absolutely.
And they took up jobs like, as teachers, as nurses, as bankers, which is why the nationalization of bank was such a huge event in the film itself. Was because women started really coming into their own in the 60s. And that's how we are enjoying that privilege today.
Absolutely. And you actually, talking about your release,
Yeah.
it's a dream run.
Yeah.
I mean, you got the late Puneet Rajkumar to
Yeah.
back it, and then
Yeah.
his wife
Yeah.
continues to back you.
Yeah.
How did that happen?
So I had acted in one of their productions before. It was called French Biryani. I did a supporting role. And that was my first Kannada film. And I happened to meet them during that time when they visited the set. And that's it. And then a year later, when we were releasing, during promotions, and by this time, my screenplay was ready. And I had already shot a 6-minute sample of the film. It was self-produced. And again, like friends from theaters had come in and acted and kind of helped me with it. So I just went up to them during the promotions and I was like, I know you always like promote like new talent. Is there any way you want to watch what I have done and read my screenplay? They're like, absolutely, why not? There was not even a moment of hesitation, no doubt about whether I would be capable of it, right? And they were like, yes, please send it to us. We would love to like go through it. And thankfully, they also loved my performance in the film itself. So they knew that, I would be able to pull off acting in the film. And then when I told them I also want to direct, they were like, okay, sure, let's make it happen. Let's, give you the resources. Because when they saw the sample and I had directed and acted in the sample, they were like, okay, if you could pull this off, I'm sure you can pull a film off. And the sample, like, I did not have too many resources. It was just me and another friend who just put the entire thing together. And of course, when you go on a film set, you have many more resources. You have executive producers who I had, Anand Akalwadi from Do Creative Labs, such a big support. And all my actors and my executive producers at PRK, plus, just somebody to look out for location, somebody to look out for casting. So I didn't have to like kind of do everything. Of course, it'll all come back to me to take decisions. But then I didn't have to like kind of head every department. So that was a relief. So they kind of gave me all the resources. And it's been an absolute dream because I think they are so supportive, encouraging, generous. And also, they never really interfere in the creative process itself because they do believe that they're backing somebody because they believe in them and that their vision needs to stand out and that their decisions have to come to the forefront. So there never was a point where they were like, you should do this because we want you to do this. That never happened. So I have to say that's very rare. It's not very common in this industry because the one who's putting in the money will always expect that things go their way. And this was extremely rare. And the fact that it's come together so well today, it truly feels like I can also like feel like, okay, maybe I can believe in myself a little bit more now that my decisions can take me to a good place, a good product by the end of it. Sometimes when there are too many decisions, you'll never really know what to make of it, right? There's just so much, a little bit, like I think my confidence and my belief in myself has just like increased a tiny bit more after this, because especially because it was my first venture, and now I'm like, okay, maybe I can trust myself a little bit more.
Absolutely. I'm sure that's been a huge booster because I'm gathering by the reactions I saw of the people who watched the movie alongside me and what I've been reading. I think it's extremely commendable first effort.
Thank you.
What's your next project?
There is a film that I'm doing. I've written it as well, and I'm directing it. Um, and that's all that I can say about
All
it.
right. So, are you continuing to act in that too, or will you act for other filmmakers?
Oh, absolutely. I'd love to act because I think acting is like my first love. And there's something about acting. It's so liberating to kind of just let go and live so many lives in just one lifetime through your characters. So it's always something that's very dear to me. So I'm always very happy to like just go in as an actor, and I'm very conscious of that when I go on a set I do check with myself, am I going there as an actor or as a director, etc., because I don't want to interfere in another person's
Absolutely.
process. So I'm always very mindful, okay, I'm going on this as just an actor, I will not be giving in my inputs of anything unless it concerns my character, etc., and I just kind of go there and like do what's necessary of me. So yes, I'd love to act and continue to act. The second film, I'm not sure yet. We'll know soon. Yeah.
Yes, it's been wonderful chatting to you, Sindhu, and I am hoping
Yeah.
somewhere down the line you will pick up where Achar and Company left off and we talked about in that film, you talked about, how women got it to, started claiming their agency
Yes,
by
yes.
going out to work.
Yeah.
But how about the heights they still need to claim,
Yeah.
breaking the glass
Yeah.
ceiling.
Yeah.
So that's the thing.
You know,
to
that's I
continue.
think that's one of the things why we wanted to make this film in the first place, right? See, from the 60s to now, yes, we've seen change, but there's so much more that we need to see. Like I said, I'm probably the handful of like female directors in the industry. There should be so many
Absolutely.
more. So I feel like and we also spoke about quite a lot of themes like domestic abuse or gender roles in society, which is constantly changing, and I feel like we have a lot left to do, lot left to learn.
Absolutely.
And find equal footing in society as in general as women. Hopefully, it's so amazing that like people like you and so many in the audience have asked for like a sequel, and I never thought about this because I was like, it was least expected, that people were coming and treating the characters as their own and as their own family, in fact, and people were like, they're really like, oh my god, this is my story, or this is my aunt's story, or people would come up to me and be like, I'm Suma, my name is Suma, and it is so sweet to kind of see them talk about it so endearingly, and it's been a surprise that they want to see another
Absolutely.
spin-off.
Because there's so many nuances, and I really love the subtlety. It's very, very emotional layers.
Yeah.
The what shall I say? The way that people decide, okay, this upsets me, but we have to accept it.
Yeah.
Where the groom chooses one sister over the other, and those
Yeah.
kind of things were just accepted.
Yeah, and that's a wonderful thing about the people in the 60s. They really had the attitude to just pick up and keep moving.
Yeah.
And that
not
is
dramatizing every small thing.
Exactly.
Right.
You're absolutely right. And that's one of the reasons why the tonality of the film is so lighthearted and so easy, because people in the 60s were like that. They really didn't have the
They
time.
looked at the big picture.
Yes.
Of
And
the welfare of everybody in the family,
Exactly.
not just themselves.
Yeah. And also, they didn't have the time to be bogged down
Right.
because they had so much to do and move, especially a middle class family, had a lot more to do going ahead in life because not everybody was educated. So they really had to figure out the situation, right? So 60s was all about picking it up from wherever and then keep moving, keep
Right.
moving. And I think we've forgotten that in a sense that, we get bogged down and I think we miss the bigger picture sometimes. And then we just need to keep going. And I'm sure that, like things will fall into place.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yes. Thank you so much, Sindhu. I think this conversation has been very enjoyable for me.
Thank you.
Pleasure to see young women directors coming to the forefront and picking on themes that actually everybody in the society will relate to. More power to you.
Thank you.
And to our audience, I hope you enjoyed this episode of Spotlight with Sandhya with Sindhu Sreenivasa Murthy. Until I'm back again with another interesting guest, take care and bye-bye. And do subscribe to the Raintree Media channel and keep watching my podcast. Bye-bye.